Shana Tova. On a hot summer day this past July, my brother Danny and I accompanied our father to the city of his youth, Glasgow, Scotland. Our whole family had planned to visit in the summer of 2020, a trip which, due to the global pandemic, never came to be. This past summer, we were all in London for a family bat mitzvah. My mother had set the day aside to be with her sister, and so the three of us boys decided to take the short London-Glasgow flight to visit the city that gave life to my now 87-year-old father. We had 12 hours and quite a bit of ground to cover, so our itinerary was divided into nice tos and need tos. We needed to see the home into which my father was born. My brother Danny, the doctor, the pride and joy of the family, who has since entered and taken over my father's medical practice, knew he needed to see the Royal College of Surgeons, where my father was trained as a physician. It would have been nice to see Glasgow's Auchentoshan whiskey distillery, but we never quite got there. I only bring it up now because I'm curious to see whether the person doing our closed captioning this year is able to spell Auchentoshan the way Auchentoshan is supposed to be spelled. The one stop that was non-negotiable was Garnethill Synagogue, the synagogue at which my grandfather served as rabbi from 1935 until his passing in 1973. It is a spectacular synagogue, consecrated in 1879, a blend of Moorish and Gothic style. Its ornate design includes pointed arches, intricate stained glass windows, a central dome with a Star of David. In more ways than one, in its day, it was the Park Avenue Synagogue of its time. As the immigrants from Glasgow's south side entered the professional, business, and academic worlds, Garnethill's membership and clergy represented the high-minded and upwardly mobile aspirations of the community. Although the community has since dwindled and moved away, the sanctuary remains in pristine condition, updated and maintained as all sanctuaries must be, as befitting Garnethill's founding splendor. But when we entered the sanctuary, it wasn't the architecture that was my father's focus. It was the memories. He pointed out where his mother, my grandmother, the Rebbitzin, used to sit up in the balcony. He showed me where his father would sit, not on the bima, but in the pews next to his sons, and how my grandfather would take leave of his aisle seat, ascend the steps on the bima, and deliver his sermon. He spoke of the synagogue leadership who sat in their seats of honor with silk top hats. He reminisced about the short fuse of one president, Jack Levine, who never raised his voice or clapped the table to shush the chatting community. Rather, his face turned purple and his neck beat red, and everyone knew it was time to get back to praying. My dad knew every nook and cranny of the building, but it wasn't the vestry or the choir loft that he talked about. He talked about the war years, the Blitz, the kinder transport children who were raised by that community, how the congregation came together for the highs and lows of our people's history, 1948, 1967, or as I spoke of last year, 1973, just a month prior to my grandfather's passing, the luminaries who would visit, the interfaith gatherings that were hosted, and the Purim plays that were performed, how on the holidays, everyone knew to show up on time and dress in their finest, connecting to God and reconnecting with each other. And how at the end of Yom Kippur, the phone would start ringing with congregants calling to thank him and wish him and my grandmother a sweet year. To stand on my grandfather's pulpit in the presence of my father, it's a moment I will not soon nor ever forget. To enter a synagogue, any synagogue, on any day, is an act pregnant with meaning. We feel it this evening, entering as we are not just sacred space, but a new year. The floodgates of memory open, memories of this synagogue, memories of all synagogues represented by all those present here this evening. This year, the first year since the passing of my distinguished predecessor, Rabbi David Lincoln, Zichrono Livracha, is especially filled with sacred remembrances. May his memory be for a blessing. To those who are here week in and week out, to those for whom tonight is your first time here, or the first time in a long time, with a full heart and a warm embrace, I welcome you and welcome you back. To those who grew up here, or in another synagogue, or not attending synagogue at all, my welcome is one and the same. May you feel the warm embrace of our synagogue, this sanctuary, and may the year ahead be a year of health, of blessing, and of peace. It's the call of the calendar that brings us here tonight. We've physically entered this sanctuary, and metaphysically other ones as well. We know the why. The question I ask of you is a different one, as once framed by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. What? What does a person expect to attain when entering a synagogue? I spend so much of my time in this space, in this sanctuary, that the act of entering risks being commonplace. My Glasgow experience reminded me that it should be anything but. For me, but really for all of us, what is it we are seeking when we enter a synagogue? At the most basic level, entering a physical sanctuary signals the human need to find a spiritual sanctuary. This year has been a difficult one, perhaps the most difficult year most of us can remember, a subject about which we will speak over the holidays. The world, as it turns out, is not as hospitable to the Jewish people as we had hoped. We are exhausted and we're emotionally threadbare. Why have people entered the sanctuary so this past year in unprecedented intensity and numbers? There are many reasons, but for most it's to find comfort, even refuge, to be affirmed in our values and to be surrounded by those who share those values. We enter this sanctuary inspired by its beauty, its melodies, and its message, and we're reminded of the world not as it is, but as we pray it can be. We take comfort in our prayers, and we are inspired to aspire to heal our broken world. Our physical sanctuary offers spiritual refuge, but at this time of year, it also serves as our wayfinder back, our spiritual tracker, a lost and found of the Spirit to which we turn to find ourselves and seek to be found by God. In many synagogues, the ark is adorned with a biblical verse, sometimes Dalif Neimiata Omed, know before whom you stand, sometimes Shiviti Hashem Lenegdi Tamid, I have set God before me always. At this time of year, we return to the sanctuary in order to do tshuva, literally to return to our better selves, our higher selves, the people whom we aspire to be, but too often fail to be. I'm reminded of the Hasidic parable of the man seen searching for something under the light of the street lamp. A passerby asks, "What is it you are looking for?" And the man replies, "I've lost my keys and I'm trying to find them." The passerby offers to help and asks, "Are you sure that you lost them here?" And the man responds, "No, I lost them elsewhere." And confused, the passerby asks, "And why are you looking for them here?" The man replies, "Because it's easier to search where the light is." In the year gone by, we've all strayed from the path. We have been hurt, and we have caused hurt. Why do we enter this sanctuary? Because the light of this sanctuary reveals our humanity and bears the promise of tshuva, of return, of finding our way back. The word synagogue derives from the Greek, meaning to bring together, a place of assembly, in Hebrew, a Beit Knesset, a house of gathering. In other words, while some may enter the synagogue seeking to connect with God, all of us come here intent to encounter the divine spark in each other. Familiar faces and new faces, each one bearing the divine imprint. Of all the ingredients that make for a vibrant synagogue, perhaps the most important is a spirit of hospitality, welcoming, in Hebrew, hachnasat orchim. As I've shared with the community on more than one occasion, the direction of my life was forever changed on that one Friday night in my junior year of college when the then Hillel director, Michael Brooks, noticed me, a young man who had never entered the building before. He said hello, he invited me to Shabbat dinner, and when I lied, telling him that I had other plans, he proceeded to invite me for the Shabbat dinner the following week. It's not easy to be as welcoming as we would like to think ourselves to be. Given the size of our community, our online presence, it remains an ever unfinished task, and we can always be better. But it is the essence of who we are, and it holds the promise of our future. Our business, the synagogue business, is a retail business, one soul at a time. No different than Abraham and Sarah on the side of the road welcoming in the wayfarer, so too all of us. The hellos you extend to faces new and familiar over the holidays, the most tried and true instrument to bring searching souls into or back into the fold. A place of refuge and renewal, a lost and found for the soul, a site of community gathering and connection. For these, amongst other reasons, we enter the synagogue. But as I reflect back on my visit with my father to my grandfather's synagogue, it strikes me that something else was and is for us this evening afoot. On that day in Glasgow, we touched far more than wooden pews and stained glass windows. On that day, we touched, as it were, eternity. My father was reminded of an earlier time of his life, reminded of the people, his parents, and the community that gave him life, a sense of self and direction, a warmth, a gratitude, a remembrance of a different time. Nostalgic, maybe, attuned to his own mortality, likely, but it was more than that. It was a connection to something larger than his personhood, a connection to a long line of ancestors dating back as far as the mind can imagine, and then a connection to a future line of descendants that extends as far forward as the heart can hope. As powerful as it was for me to stand on my grandfather's bima with my father watching me, I can only imagine what it must have felt like for him to see me, his son, the rabbi, standing there. My father expressed no interest in visiting his parents' graves. He wanted to remember how they lived, not died. But my brother and I, who had never visited the cemetery, insisted, and my dad relented, and on our way out of town, we made a visit. We paid our respects, we placed stones on their headstones, and with his son the doctor on one side, and his son the rabbi on the other, we put our arms around each other, and we recited the El Maleh, the memorial prayer. That which my father received from his parents, that which he passed on to his children, please God one day to his children's children and beyond. The visit to the cemetery, as it turned out, was well worth it. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai. One thing I ask, writes the psalmist, this I do seek, to dwell in the house of the Lord, beholding God's beauty and visiting God's sanctuary. No matter our age, no matter our stage in life, no matter the diverse paths that bring us here this evening, we enter the synagogue and usher in the new year, bound together by a common hope and a shared charge, that our time together serves to clarify that which matters most to us, that for which we are grateful, that our time together roots our gratitude in those who came before, without whom we would not be who we are. And finally, and most importantly, that our time together prompts us to affirm our values in the present, filled by the hope that they will bear fruit into the generations to come. Shana Tova. Thank you for being part of the Park Avenue Synagogue family. I hope you enjoyed the sermon. Please consider becoming a regular part of our online community by scanning the QR code or visiting supportpas.org or making a donation. Shalom, and see you in Shul.